is Marcia Forbes, and I'm the Executive Chairperson of Phase 3 Productions Limited. Who is Marcia Forbes? I'm a media specialist. I am a senior adjunct lecturer at the University of the West Indies, and I am a mother, a grandmother, a mentor, and just a gregarious woman. I was born in Kingston, and the deal that my paternal aunt made with my father is that she would care for me as if I were her own. And so by the age of about 3, I went to live with my paternal aunt, who was a head teacher in Irish Town. I grew up on the Craigton property, coffee plantation now. I went to St. Mark's Church, Anglican Church, was confirmed, taught Sunday school, sang on the choir, and went to my aunt's all-age school until I passed the common entrance for my first choice, which was St. Hugh's High School. And then my cousin, who passed her exam but not to get through to not to St. Hugh's, she got through for Queen's and couldn't get into St. Hugh's. So they moved me, when I was about to start 3rd form, they moved me from St. Hugh's to Queen's because my uncle-in-law really, he was a financial controller of the leading milk company in Jamaica at the time, Cremo, that did ice cream and milk and everything. And so for uncle to drop me at St. Hugh's and to drop my cousin Elaine at Queen's would have been way too much after coming down from Irish Town Hills. And so I started at Queen's in 3rd form and did 3rd to 6th form at Queen's. I do remember that I was very feisty. In Jamaica we will say feisty. I was very good at back-chatting. So my uncle, who was full Chinese, he would get very angry and his hair would stand straight on his head, but that didn't affect me at all. I would be rude just the same. And so I just thought I was a normal girl growing up and not paying as close attention to schoolwork as I should or could, because I met my husband of almost 40 years who passed some months ago. I met him when I just turned 17. I was in lower 6th form at Queen's, and I met him on my very first summer job. And from that day hence, it became a time of planning my wedding. Of course, I wasn't married until some years later, but upper 6th form was spent daydreaming about what this wedding would be. And so my A-level subjects were very promptly passed at O-level standard. I didn't know whether he was the one or not, because when I first met him, he was quite chubby, and I told my older sister that, you know, this fat fellow liked me, and I just laughed the whole thing off. But his side of the story was always that I was besotted the moment I met him. That was a male ego, because I really wasn't. But he was a charmer, and he would pick me up at school, and all the parents would kind of look like, okay then, because he was almost 10 years my senior. But you know, Richard was very gregarious, very warm and bubbly, and I guess by that time I was becoming more serious and trying to take my schoolwork a little bit more serious. For him, he thought the world spun around nurses. He thought that every day that the sun rose, it rose on a nurse. And every day that the sun set, it would set on a nurse. And so at 17, it was like, well, you know, what's this thing with nurses? I can do that. And I went into nursing as a teenager entirely because of Richard. And my aunt was not exactly happy, but I'm a very stubborn and determined person. I remember my first medical surgical book, Sorensen. I have it to this day. Richard gave it to me. It was very expensive in those times, and he has a big heart in it, and his initials RHD. And so he persuaded me that nursing was a good and honorable profession to enter. I did extremely well in nursing. I graduated top of the class in nearly everything I did in nursing, and I'm a qualified registered general nurse. I'm a qualified midwife. I'm a qualified critical care nurse. I'm a qualified nurse educator, and I also was a ward sister in charge of a ward in my 20s. In those days, it was unheard of, because people would come to the ward and say, "May I speak to Sister Forbes?" And they'd be looking at me in my big red belt, because in those days the sisters wore a red belt with a nice silver buckle, and I'd be in my big cap with the lace all around, because the sisters wore caps with lace, you know, different types of lace. And I would say, "I'm Sister Forbes," and they'd look at me like, "No, you're not, you're a little girl." And that went on, and eventually when we formed Phase 3, initially as a business name. So Phase 3, don't ask me why Phase 3, because I'm going to tell you a story that is going to be just all made up. Over the years, we have made up a story about, you know, the different stages of life and why it became Phase 3. But I actually left nursing, not because I wanted to, but because we now had formed the company, a limited liability company, and we're moving out of the home where we started Phase 3 into proper offices. And I wanted to get 3 months leave to set up the business and sort it out. And I was not granted the leave, and so I left. I think people who know me know that, you know, if I set myself on a path, I'm not going to let what I call minor impediments get in the way. And so I resigned. I paid back my bond, because I had just finished my nursing education training as a nurse educator. I paid that back in full, and I pretty much took the helm at Phase 3, because in those days we were right on Osborne Road. Mutual Life had opened a warehouse complex there, and that is where we started officially in a proper office setting. And I was everything: the general manager, the props person. I remember when we did the series Claffey, comedy series with Valerie Johnson and Blacka Ellis and a number of Jamaica's leading stars in those days. I remember I was doing the hair, I was doing the wardrobe. All my clothes that I didn't want to wear became used on that comedy series. And Phase 3, pretty much, I tell people that I've never known what it is like to feel that the company is struggling. From the day, I think because we saw a need, and that need, we filled that need. Paddy, Richard, if you hear me say Paddy, that's Richard. He couldn't remember people's names, so he'd call them Paddy. And in return, everybody called him Paddy. So Paddy felt that video production had just come to Jamaica in the early 1980s. And he was a techie. He was an original techie before the time of computer. And so Richard, he wasn't a trained engineer. His brother, his older brother Lincoln, is actually a trained engineer, but Richard was a bush doctor engineer. You couldn't fool him with circuitry or getting anything done electronically. And so he was a customs officer, and in those days, he was one of the youngest ones for his grade at the time. And he got into video as a hobby, and I would keep the books. And we also had video rental. We set up a video rental company. And again, I was in charge of renting the tapes and keeping the books, and that went very well. At first, I had my full-time job as a nurse. He had his full-time job as a customs officer. When Delano, our son, came, very early in Delano's life, we thought, well, this could really become a proper business. And they were transferring Richard out of town. And remember I told you I'm feisty? And I said, Richard, by this time we had 3 television programs on JBC TV every week. And I said, Richard, we can make a go of this. we can really have a proper business. And so having set up my lawyer friend Angela Robertson, she had created this limited liability company, and then we employed accountants, Mr. Victor Hamilton, he passed, and we started phase 3 as a proper business. For whatever reason, the government, in their wisdom, decided that they did not want RJR Gleaner to have this cable system. They wanted new players to enter the market. RJR and Gleaner decided that they wanted to apply for a cable license together. By this time, I had gone to Boston and I studied cable television and telcos. It was a very heady time because the 1996 Telcos Act was just being passed in America. I was taught, one of my professors was FCC, Federal Communications Commissioner, and so I was exposed. I visited Time Warner Cable. I knew a lot about cable systems at the time. But before that, as an undergraduate, based on just passion and interest, I had done, I think, what was the first cable study in Jamaica, looking at how they were set up and what services they were offering as an undergraduate. Before I went to Boston, they had asked me to be a consultant on the project. And so I went to the meetings, I wrote whatever needed to be written and guided the process. For whatever reason, the government, in their wisdom, decided that they did not want RJR Gleaner to have this cable system. They wanted new players to enter the market, because remember, RJR was long established as having their radio brands. It was 2 brands at the time. Gleaner was a leading newspaper in the English-speaking Caribbean, so they thought, okay, let's widen the media pool. Then we caught wind that the government really didn't want Oliver Clark, who is a main person at the Gleaner, to have access to television. That was a talk at the time. I can't say whether it was so or not. And they rejected the proposal, the request for Gleaner RJR to have a channel. So Gleaner and RJR separated. And in their wisdom, the government thought, RJR applied for JBC TV and the radio part of the Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation. And government sold it to Radio Jamaica. Radio Jamaica is a publicly listed company and with over 10,000 shareholders. So I think that was a part of what drove the government decision to sell JBC TV and Radio 1 to RJR. And because of the work that I had done as a consultant with a bid for the cable system, I was invited to head up this new entity. Plus, it wasn't just that I had done work. Phase 3 had been involved as well, because they had come and met with Richard and I, and we had had many long conversations as to how the cable system could be set up. So I was invited to head up television, what became Television Jamaica. Now, coming into Television Jamaica, it was a fantastic time. We had inherited the goodwill of a Jamaica Broadcasting Corporation, because whatever you might say about JBC, and there's a lot that people had to say, because remember, the cable systems were running roughshod over JBC TV. They were pulling down the programs before they could even get to the cinemas in Jamaica. The cable systems were showing the newest and the best programs, and poor JBC was struggling. So it meant that by the time I started at the station, it was number 2 in a 2-market station outside of cable. And so, but coming from my training in Boston and remember I told you I grew up feisty, and that determination and that will to succeed. I remember Paddy told me that somebody said to him, what I know about running a TV station. I said to Richard, well, tell them to just watch me. And I went and we formed a very small team of persons who worked very hard. And that little team of about 6 of us, we worked hard, and we conceptualized a lot of the programs people see now and they think, oh, they were always there. We strategized even to the point where we had to put Schools Challenge Quiz into peak prime time at one point just to be able to hold the sponsorship support. And it worked. It worked. We were able to turn the station around. We had some great things that day. We qualified for World Cup football. The other day we were talking about it. That was to me one of the most energetic and exciting times in Jamaica. We decided to do all around the island to carry these live outside broadcasts. The Raytown one, when we beat Japan in that match, it was like the whole country had come together for the Reggae Boys. TVJ was great. It was a great time. We all worked hard, and we turned the station around, and we became the #1 station. We were, at the time, at least 15 points ahead of CVM. And for the time I was at TVJ, they had about 3 different general managers, because it's so they send them, it's so we lick them down and move on. And Jamaicans really, I think they were very proud of TVJ because they realized that we didn't dump the goodwill that people had for JBC. We enhanced what was there, and we became truly the nation station. The focus on local content, that was something that it was very hard. For me, the local content was not about movies, it was about beefing up our local news. And so we're really, and the morning program, I will tell people I'm the one who brought Simon Croskill to TV, I'm the one who brought Neville Bell to television, and a number of other persons, Emily Crooks to television, a number of persons who were not known to be TV personalities, but we brought them on and they really, really shone. When I went to TVJ, I had actually applied to Carrimac to do my PhD and got accepted to do not an MPhil markup. I got accepted to go straight into a PhD program because as an undergraduate I got the Dean's Award for Excellence in my academic work 2 consecutive years, and the last year I got this Fulbright scholarship. So I was a strong student, and so TVJ, I ran the television program at Carrimac. Before I went to TVJ, I ran it single-handedly, which is how I ended up teaching Lisa Hanna and Dr. Hume Johnson when they were undergraduates. And I started, and I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 1 year at TVJ, and then I'm going to start the PhD. After 1 year, I realized that I was in a fool's paradise because there was no way I could run the station and turn it around and do a PhD. So in the second year, I wrote the university. Second year at TVJ, I wrote the university and said, look, I'm pulling out of this program. And then after 6 years at TVJ, about to go into my 7th year, I said, you know, it's either do the PhD now or it's going to be never. And so, plus there are other little changes at RGR that I am a woman who I know what I want. And if you are doing what I feel is not in my best interest, I'm not going to stay and complain and make your life miserable or make my life miserable. I'm going to say thank you very much, goodbye, just the way I did as a permanent secretary. I did it for 1 year. It was fantastic. I loved it. But when the time comes, I have no problem with the art of saying ta-ta when the time comes. And so when the time came at TVJ, I felt I had done what I needed to do. I had turned the station around. They were building TVJ, the new TVJ down at the RGR premises, and that was due to be moved in shortly. And so I said ta-ta. Well, big grown men whose name shall not be called came to my office and bawled long tears. Marcia, Mrs. Forbes, whatever they called me, because just different ones. Why are you leaving us at this time? I remember one staff member said, you are like Moses, we're at the Red Sea now and you're leaving us and we're going to drown. It was emotional to leave TVJ because we had worked so well as a team that grown men felt so torn that I was abandoning them, and I had to say, no, I've taught you enough and we have done enough together. You can travel that journey on your own. And they did. And TVJ has done tremendously well. And when I look at it, I'm proud because I know this is a part of my legacy. This is a part of what I have done and made my mark in Jamaica. In the mornings when I get out of bed, I'm motivated by, at this stage of my life, the sense of purpose of doing something for my country. In the mornings when I get out of bed, I'm motivated by, at this stage of my life, the sense of purpose of doing something for my country, of doing something for the young people of my country. The books I've written, they've been dedicated to the young people, the youth of Jamaica. The first book, Music, Media and Adolescent Sexuality in Jamaica, looked at the influence of television on adolescents and their sexuality, in particular through the prism of music videos, which was like the #1 programming genre of adolescents when I was collecting my data. The second one looks at new media, because having looked at television, it sort of begged you to look at the things that were happening now, the Facebook, the Twitter, the way young people are using social media. And so the third one was to have drilled down some more into life online and to look at how people form relationships online. And I actually had started conducting data gathering for that, but my husband's health got really bad and all thoughts of book writing had to be kind of put on the back burner. Richard passed 8 months ago. And when I was in it, I knew it was hard, very hard in 2015 when I realized that I could not really cope on my own. My housekeeper used to go home every other weekend. And for the weekends that she was there, it was me and Patty. Richard used to go to phase 3, stay all day Saturday. I'd do whatever the women's stuff, your hair and whatever needs to be done on a Saturday. And then I'd pick him up. And then Sunday we'd do, family stuff. Well, when it got to the point where I started living in fear, I started feeling, Richard could fall and I wouldn't be able to pick him up. Or he could just die and it would be me alone and him, and how would I manage? And all of 2015, because he was blind for 18 years, but that never ever stopped him. He went rafting, he went parasailing, he did everything blind. Put him on his tube down the White River, tie him in, and the raft guide was there with him and he'd go down the river. Tie him up or go to Rio, put him in his thing, he's above the boat floating, happy as a lark. He went to Cuba, he's running to catch his bus. Just hold on to him and we're good. Then he changed and became this person who couldn't do all the things. And before he started dialysis, it was bad. But when he started dialysis, it was really hard because the dialysis brought on some other dialysis-related complications because he had renal failure in addition to being blind. And then it started taking a toll on his mental capacity. And so it was rough. The middle of 2015, it was like God sent me angels because I got to the point now where I felt I cannot cope. I'm really going to lose it. But everybody looking on thought, oh, Marcia, how you coping so well? Look how you take Patty everywhere. You're such a good wife. Of course, you'll always have the ex-girlfriends who would say, oh, she's a miserable old bat. But we would be up and down every weekend. Richard would be going to dinner parties, and we made it a point of duty. We'd go, different places on a weekend. We'd drive to Port Antonio, or we'd try out the new highway. There was always something to be done, and Richard was always game, up to the very end of his life, because Richard died on Wednesday, the 3rd of August. And on Tuesday, the 2nd of August, Richard was at phase 3 all day, holding court with everybody. It is only on reflection we realize that he was saying his goodbyes. We grew up with that spirit of knowing that you have to give back. So in my adult life, from I was at TVJ, I was invited to the board of the United Way of Jamaica, and I'm still on that board. And over the years, I've always been involved in voluntary activities. As we are now, I'm on the board of the Council of Voluntary Social Services. I chair a committee that spans both CVSS and United Way, Planning and Research Committee. I'm also on the steering committee of the 51% Coalition Women in Partnership for Development. More recently, since Paddy passed, I've been invited to be a part of the International Women's Forum. It's a global group of 6,500 women across about 35 countries. It looks at women in leadership, and our main mission is to increase and improve leadership in our country, because you never know how you can touch somebody's life. It might be a simple thing, but to that person, it's a huge thing. For me, wealth means that I have great family and friends, and I have enough money to do enough of the things that I want to do. I don't have enough money to be able to go to London 3-4 times a year, but I have enough money that if I really wanted to, I could afford one trip to London a year and probably a couple to the United States. I love to travel. I love to entertain. I love to be with family and friends. I love to be with my son and his wife Royan and my little grandson Ethan. That to me is wealth, having family that depend on you and love you and care about you. Yes, the money is important. I'm not going to tell you that it's, it's all right not to have any money. I would not be happy if I didn't have any money. And so having us enough money, but importantly having good friends and family.